Hello, my dear students. Welcome to your English virtual class. Today, we will discuss a new lesson that is from Unit 3, Section B, titled Boating with Friends. Now, before we go into the story, let us learn something about the author. The name of the author, the story was written by Jerome Gay Jerome, born in 1859 and died in 1927. He was an English writer and a humorist. Now he was an English writer means he was from England, and he was a humorist too. Humorist means someone who writes funny stories. Okay, he is best remembered for his work Three Men in a Boat. He also wrote many plays, and his works have been widely translated. Now, in the students, as you can see, there are some meanings given. So, I want you all to go through the meaning and understand. Okay. Now, let's get back to the story. If you were to go on an adventure trip with a group of like-minded people, what would you choose to do here? If you were given a chance to go on an adventure trip with a group of like-minded people means with a group of people who thinks exactly like you think. Okay, means your their ideas, opinions, or thoughts are same. So if you got a chance to go with this group of people who thinks exactly like you do, what would you choose? Now here options are given. Would you choose a houseboat trip, or trekking in the mountains, or a tour by camper van, or a road trip by cycle, motorbike, or car? Now let us see the story. This story is about three friends who enjoy a boating trip, okay, who were on a boating trip on the River Thames. Now here, River Thames is a very famous river in London. There were in a boat, Jerome, George, and Harry. So here we comes to know the name of the three friends, that is Jerome, George, and Harry. They planned to spend a few days boating on the Thames. Now these three friends, they planned that they would spend some days boating on the River Thames. The clock on the wall showed 6 o'clock, 6 in the morning. So here we comes to know the time. It is 6 in the morning. For the past hour, Jerome and George had been sitting huddled up in the blankets, sharing their experiences, some true and some not so true. Now here, since it was very cold and it was 6 o'clock, since it was 6 o'clock in the morning, the weather was very cold, and Jerome and George were covered in blankets, okay, and they were discussing, they were sharing their life experiences, and the experiences which they were sharing, some of them were true and some of them were not so true, which means some of the experiences were made up stories. When Jerome finished his narration, George set to work to wake up Harry with the point of an umbrella. Now, when Jerome finished telling his story, okay, narrating his experiences, George, he tried to wake Harry, who was still sleeping, okay. Now, he tried to wake Harry with the point of an umbrella. Now, in the picture, you can see the umbrella, okay. Now, with that, he tried to wake Harry, and he said, "Wake up, lazy bones." The third prod did it, but he turned over on the other side and said he would be down in a minute, and he was still dreaming. So, George, he tried, he tried to wake Harry 3 times, okay? For the first time, when he tried to wake Harry, Harry was not moving. Even for the second time, Harry was not moving. And for the third time, finally, Harry moved, okay? But instead of turning over to the side, turned his body towards the other side, and he said he would wake up in a minute, and he went back to sleeping. They soon let him know where he was, however, with the aid of with a boat hook, and he sat up suddenly. So now, since Harry was not waking up, so they decided to let Harry know where they were. Okay, they told Harry that they told Harry where they were, and so suddenly with the help, this time with that, not with an umbrella but with a boat hook. Boat hook means it's a long pole, okay, which is used for pulling a boat. Okay, so with the help of a boat hook, they woke Harry up. Jo- sorry, George pulled up the canvas, and the three of them poked their heads out to look down at the water. So here they were sitting, these three friends, they were on a boat and they were inside the canvas. Canvas means the materials with which they were covering their boats, because we cannot, since it was very cold, so in order to protect themselves from cold wind, they had to cover, okay, they had to cover the boats, so that is called canvas. So these three friends, they poked their heads, they tried to see, they tried to look down at the river, okay, from their canvas. They shivered at the sight. Now, when they saw the river, they were shivering and they were trembling, okay, by looking at the river. The idea. Now, what was the reason that they were shivering when they saw the river? Because the idea agreed about the night before. So, what a night before, these three friends, they decided that they would get up early in the morning. They would take off the blankets. They would come out of the blankets and they would leap into the river, okay, with a loud scream, okay, with a joyous shout, and enjoy a long, delicious swim. So that was a plan they had, okay. That was a plan. That was the idea that they decided on to do. Now that morning had arrived, now that it was morning time and it was time for them to it was time for them to dive into the river. So when the time came, however, the notion seemed less tempting. So when the time came, the notion means the idea of jumping into the river, okay, it seemed less interesting. Less tempting means they were not very interested to do. The water looked dark and chilly. The wind felt cold. So here, even the water looked very dark and chilly, and even the wind was so cold. Well, who's going in first? Said Harry at last. So here, finally, Harry broke the silence and he asked the question. Well, so who is diving in first? Okay. Now, there was no rush for precedence. Now, among the three person, there was no one to take the lead. Precedence means to take the lead, okay, to be in the first. George settled the matter for himself. He sat down and started pulling on his socks. Now here, George, he tried to make excuse, okay, he tried to make excuse now, okay, since he was not ready to jump into the river, so he made an excuse and he sat down and he started pulling on his socks. And Harry, it would be messy to get into the boat again, so he started sorting out his clothes and promptly dressed for the day. So even Harry, he was trying to make excuses for himself too. So he said that the room inside the boat, it would be very messy, so he would just go. So he started arranging, okay, he started arranging his clothes, and very punctually he was getting ready, okay, he was getting ready and dressed, and he started dressing up. That left Jerome to decide what he was going to do. So now Jerome was left alone to decide what he was going to do. It was Jerome's idea in the first place, and he desperately wanted to show that it wasn't a harebrained idea at all. Now here, we comes to know that the idea of jumping into the river early in the morning, it was the idea given by Jerome. So, at this point of time, Jerome, he wanted to show that his idea wasn't a harebrained, means his idea was not a silly one, okay? So, though he did not relish the plunge. Now, though he did not relish means though he did not enjoy it, okay? So, though he did not enjoy the idea of diving, he began to make excuse for himself. So, even Jerome, he himself began to make excuse for himself by thinking such like there might be snakes in the river or weeds in the river. But then he decided to save his face. So, but then still then he had to face his friends. Now his friends would make fun of him. So in order to save his face, he decided to go down to the edge. Okay, he decided to go down to the edge of the river and just dipping his legs in the river. So he tried to go down at the shore, okay, at the bank. That is, we call it bank, okay, that's the shore of the river, we call it bank. So he went to the bank, okay, the border of the river, and he thought of just dipping his legs in the river. He thought of just touching the river with his legs. So he took a towel crept out onto the bank and wormed his way along onto the branch of a tree that dipped down in the river. So what he did, he took a towel with him and he moved slowly into the bank, okay, on the side of the bank, and he walked with great difficulty because now he know it's very cold, okay. So with great difficulty he walked along into the branch of a tree. Now there was a branch, okay, nearby the bank, okay. There was a tree whose branch was bending down and it was touching the river, okay. So Jerome, he walked onto the branch of a tree and that tipped down into the river. So now it was bitterly cold. The wind was blowing and it was very cold. The wind cut like a knife as he stood on the overhanging branch. Now even the wind was like a knife that was cutting on the skin, okay. That feeling was, he was getting that feeling. Then he started having second thoughts. Now again he started having second thought, like whether to jump or not, okay, or would he just go back. So finally what he does, he would meekly go back into the boat. So he decides to quietly and gently, he decides to go back into the boat and dress, and he decided to go back into the boat and wear his dress. He decided to risk their cheers, but as he turned, the wicked branch gave way and he and the towel went in together with a tremendous splash. So when he decided that he would just go back and he would just face his friends, even though his friends makes fun of him, he would just face it, okay. So when as he decided to go back and as he turned, okay, the branch suddenly broke off, okay. It suddenly broke off and he and the towel which he was carrying with him, both he and the towel went in together, okay. They fell down into the river with a tremendous splash, means with a very huge sound made by something, okay. When you jump into a river from a very great height, the sound that comes, that is called a splash, okay. So even Jerome fell from the branch with a tremendous splash. He was out midstream with a liter of the Thames water inside him before he knew what had happened. Now, before Jerome could find out what had happened, before he could realize what had happened, he found that he was in the middle of the stream, okay. So students, we will continue the rest of the story in the next class. So I want you all to go through the lesson and listen to the video and understand the lesson, okay. So that is all we have for today. Thank you.